time it is. Gotcha! Get into it! Get into it! Yes! We're back! Oh, excuse me. Oh, sorry. I'm starting a little later this evening. Work was a bit busy today, but it was fun. Quite manageable. And then I had to take care of some errands after work, and then I had to check up on my lovely mother, and then I took a nap and went and dropped off an umbrella to a friend, and then I came back here for story time. So let's go ahead and get started. Actually, let me see how far we have. Okay. All right. So we're on chapter 9. There are 21 chapters in this book. We can get through this pretty quickly because book 2 is the longer in the series. Actually, book 2 and the final book. Dark Whispers is not as long, even though Dark Whispers is one of my favorites out of the series of the Unicorn Chronicles for a lot of different reasons. Specifically, a character from mythology, the centaur, the lord of the centaurs, Chiron, is featured in the third book and is very important, but we'll talk about that another time. As I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max, relax, and chillaxing time, in between time, mean time, scheme time, study time, break time, CP time, handy time, that you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and music, and many, many more in between. Let's go ahead and get started as we continue our journey with Kara, Lightfoot, the Squidgem, and the Dimblethumb as they travel towards the outer edge of one of the major dragons of the world of Luster. If I'm not mistaken, there are 7. Might get corrected on that as we progress through the story, but it's been a long time since I've read the first book, but I'm pretty sure there are 7 dragons in the world of Luster. There's Firethroat, Ebelon, Growlmug. We'll talk about it next time. It's totally fine. Chapter 9, The Hunted. They set off through the forest and did not stop when darkness fell. Lightfoot, putting all his energy into finding the way and avoiding detection, was distracted and unwilling to talk. Kara began to stumble again after a bit. The Dimblethumb picked her up and carried her in his arms. She fell asleep, nestled against his warm and furry breast. When she woke, she gestured to him that she wanted to walk. He hesitated, then set her gently on her feet. She wished she could speak to him. She wanted to thank him for the ride. But the nearly full moon that shone through the drooping trees, she saw that they had entered a swamp. Ahead of her, the Squidgem was riding on Lightfoot's back as the unicorn picked his way along a trail that led between large stretches of brackish water. Strange dark things flutter through the night air above them. Occasionally, one would swoop close to Kara, and the whir of its rapidly beating wings would give her a start. The first time this happened, she cried out in fear, but after that she kept her silence, partly because the Dimblethumb had laid a heavy paw on her shoulder and scowled at her, indicating that such outbursts were a bad idea. Which is also true. If you're lost, or if you are in a forested area, it is not a good idea to make a lot of noise, because then you alert the larger predators and animals that are around, or maybe a group of people that are not so nice where you are. So silence is the better answer until you definitively know that help is on the way. Like, say if, for example, you could see a group of people, non-hostile, meaning that they are not brandishing weapons or any type of aggressive behavior, then you can yell out and say, "Hey, I need help! SOS, help!" Or don't even speak. Use a white flag and say, "Hey, over here, surrender, as well as help is needed. Come on." So, the Dimblethumb is right by telling her not to yell. So eager was she to please, to prove that she was fit for this adventure, that when something snake-like slithered across their path, she stopped short but managed to hold in her cry of fear. The serpent stared at her for a moment. Subtly, without warning, it reared up and hissed at her, spreading a vivid red hood that actually glowed in the darkness. Then she did scream and jump backward as well. She bumped into the Dimplethumb, who seemed as startled as she was, for he too let out a sound of surprise. Then leaning over her, he roared at the serpent. The sound hurt Kara's ears. The serpent hissed again more softly. The Dimplethumb made a menacing growl deep in his throat. Kara's heart pounded, and her skin grew cold as she stared at the serpent, wondering whether it would strike at her. The Dimplethumb continued his low growl until the serpent finally dropped to its belly. Slithering forward, it slipped silently into the murky water. Kara didn't object when the Dimplethumb picked her up and carried her again. Same, honey, same. Because I'm terrified of snakes and spiders. Terrified. Not a fan. Could definitely deal with them if I saw them in real life, but definitely would be screaming internally because I'm terrified of them. It's cool to make fun of people who, I watched a video earlier this week of a young lady who was really upset at I think they were at a park, and her sister was coming from behind on the trail, and her dad is comforting the older sister. She's like, it's just bugs. Why is she so upset? Like, it's okay. And she didn't understand that by making that statement, you kind of make people feel shame for being afraid. It's okay to be afraid of things that you are afraid of. Everybody in this world is afraid of something or someone in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to rule your life, but it is something. Fear is a real thing and a real concept for people. Whether you allow that fear to rule your life is a different discussion. In this way, passing through swamp and field and forest along the edges of low cliffs beside swiftly running crystal streams, they arrived in 2 days at the edge of Firethroat's territory. They had stopped to sleep twice, at which times Kara had been fed nuts and berries and a kind of root the Squidgem dug up. "What is it?" she asked the first time he came scampering up with one of the dark brown roots in his paws and handed it to her. "We call it Tarka," replied Lightfoot, resting his horn on her shoulder. "Twist it and see what happens." When she did as he directed, the root's nubbly husk popped open, revealing a crisp white interior. "Try it," said the unicorn. To her surprise, it tasted like sweet almonds. "Good," she said, smiling at the Squidgem. "Yeah, hotcha like it," he replied, dashing off into the darkness. He returned a few minutes later with another of the roots. Stopping 3 or 4 feet in front of her, he chittered something she could not understand, then tossed her the root. She caught it before it landed in her lap, prompting an enthusiastic burst of chatter from the Squidgem. Acting on impulse, she picked up a nut and tossed it to him. Leaping into the air, the little creature caught the nut 1.5 feet above the ground. Then he bounded over her, dropped the nut in her lap, and ran about 20 feet away. "You like to play catch," she cried in delight, tossing him the nut again. The Squidgem caught it handily, and Kara spent another 15 minutes tossing him various objects she found on the forest floor. He caught almost all of them, missing only if her throws were absurdly wide of the mark. The leaps, twists, and turns he made in accomplishing these catches were so wild that she found herself laughing out loud, the first time she had done so in longer than she could remember. Lightfoot and the Dimplethumb took turns watching at night. Feeling safe in their care, Kara slept soundly, yet she found herself tormented by strange dreams in which she was hunted by some faceless horror. The second night she was woken from one of these dreams by the Dimplethumb, who placed a huge paw gently over her mouth to keep her from crying out. After a moment, when he was sure she was awake and calm, he uncovered her mouth. Soon after, Lightfoot came to her. His horn looked as if it had been carved from the bright and shining moon. Placing it across her shoulder, he said, "We're being trailed." Fighting down her fears, she replied, "How do you know?" "The Squidgem was out hunting and spotted a camp. We need to move ahead as fast as possible while its owner is still resting." Kara furrowed her brow. "Just one of them? I thought the Delvers would be hunting us in packs." "It's not a Delver," replied Lightfoot. "It's the man." Fully awake now, she rose quickly, silently, and followed Lightfoot out of their camp. The Dimplethumb lagged behind. When she turned to look back, she saw him moving about the spot, trying to erase all signs that they had been there. The Squidgem was nowhere to be seen. Digging her hand in her pocket to make sure the amulet was in its place, she trudged on through the darkness. So obsessed were they with the danger behind that they did not remember Nedzik's warning to flee with one eye watching before them. Thus, it was that they did not see the Delver camp until they had nearly stumbled into it. Lightfoot stopped so abruptly that Kara bumped into him. Only the effort she had spent training herself not to cry out when they were traveling through the swamp kept her from betraying their presence with a shout. Moving cautiously up beside Lightfoot, she froze when she saw, not far ahead, a low fire, little more than a bed of glowing coals. It was surrounded by dark forms that she took to be sleeping Delvers. The reason she assumed they were Delvers was that the two figures keeping watch by the fire most definitely were. More than ever, she was glad of the ability to communicate with Lightfoot without speaking. "What do we do now?" she asked. "I believe a quiet retreat is in order," he replied silently, beginning to back away. Kara had long ago noticed the unicorn's ability to move through the forest without making a single sound. She, alas, possessed no such skill. Despite her best efforts, she stepped on a dry twig that broke beneath her foot. It was a tiny sound, yet in the silence of the forest, it exploded against her horrified ears like a firecracker. Lightfoot froze where he stood. She did the same until the Delver guards leapt to their feet and with a blood-curdling scream started after them. "On my back!" ordered Lightfoot. She obeyed without hesitation. No sooner had she scrambled onto his shoulders than he was off like a rocket, hurtling into the darkness. Hunched low over his shoulders, Kara wrapped her hands in his silky mane and prayed that she would be able to hold on. Branches whipped against her as they careened wildly through the forest. Dark shapes rose before them, then vanished to the side as Lightfoot veered around them. So tightly were Kara and Lightfoot connected that for a moment she felt as if she were the unicorn, as if it were her legs doing the running, her aching lungs and hammering heart fueling the flight from the Delvers. They plunged through a misty hollow, up to a steep bank, in and out of patches of moonlight, until suddenly Lightfoot stopped, flanks heaving, and stood silently, listening. In the distance, they could hear Delvers crying out crying out in anger and frustration. Kara and Lightfoot were silent. "We've lost them," he said triumphantly. It was only then that Kara realized how terrified she had been. Trying to stop the trembling that suddenly overtook her, she said, "You must be able to see in the dark. I had no idea where we were going." "Half the time, neither did I," confessed the unicorn. Kara caught her breath in surprise, then started to laugh. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. From the dark and distance, they heard a terrible roar followed by angry battle cries. The sounds were confusing, jumbled together and muted by distance, but when silence fell, there was no question what they meant. "They've got the Dimblethumb," whispered Kara in horror. And that is where we will end for tonight. This story keeps you on your toes. Where it goes, nobody knows. Until we turn that page to see again another story unfold here and then. Now, my dear friends, have a lovely night. Enjoy yourself. And I'll see you next time. Bye, lovelies. Bye-bye.